After buying a choose-your-own-adventure book called Journey to the Lake, I turned the pages of fate. Following my wife's death, my son and I spent months travelling across the country in a decked-out camper. We stopped at picturesque villages and national parks, but we never put down roots. The end destination was always Inverness, Lara's favourite city. The most wonderful place on earth, in her own words. Given that she was the most wonderful wife and mother on earth, it seemed appropriate to scatter her ashes there. I love adventures, so it was a foregone conclusion that my eyes would be drawn to one particular book in a charity store. Journey to the Lake. Choose Your End. A hardback novel with a frayed paper cover that looked well used yet stout. It was a knockoff. We all know the official children's brand of adventure stories. Still, I was intrigued. The design of the cover was hypnotic. Minuscule white writing on an all-black cover. Stark, sinister minimalism. It gripped me. Moreover, I have fond memories of the choose-your-own-adventure books from Sam's childhood. I had to buy it. However, Journey to the Lake seemed a little more mature than the tales I remembered. Choose Your End. The title alone was bleak, but I didn't know the half of it. You reach a crossroads. Uh-oh, Sam said, chuckling as he read the book aloud. What? I asked, smiling. Time to make our first decision, my son replied. Leave this to me, I smiled, cracking my neck decisively. Sam groaned. Oh, Dad, no. You always used to make the worst decisions. I know. Mum was the smart one. I laughed. I was the beauty and she was the brains. Sam rolled his eyes, before clearing his throat and holding the page towards the campus interior light. He read with the giddiness of a child. 19 years old, in my eyes, was still the age of a child. Pick the safest path to the lake, Sam read. Take the road to Yellowtown, page 11, or take the road to Brickrock, page 43. Yellowtown, I exuberantly requested. Sam, being a people-pleasing saint, obliged with a snort. He flicked through the pages of the dusty unbranded book and settled on page 11. To summarise, the road took our protagonist to Yellowtown, a seemingly serene place with a twisted history. It was haunted by the Seafarer, a stranger who was hanged for slaughtering 7 townsfolk. And his ghost, who donned a black raincoat, stalked the main character. Oh, so it's that kind of story, I said. I thought this would be a fantastical adventure with dragons and elves. Sam gulped. Maybe the Seafarer has a magical boat, I suggested, smirking. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. I'm tired, Sam said. Oh, scared, I teased. Well, if you want it now, I might as well keep driving to Carlisle. You okay with that? We could treat ourselves to a hotel tonight, rather than kipping in the van. Sam shrugged. Sure, just wake me in a couple of hours. I woke him far earlier than that. Welcome to June? I whispered, squinting to read the road sign for a town I hadn't seen on the GPS. I may have misread the town name, but it was dark and one of the letters had faded. Neat rows of structures lined either side of the street. Quaint cottages, shops, and other quintessential British buildings. Buildings painted various shades of yellow, like the town in the book. A strange coincidence. Then, in one house's upper window, I briefly glimpsed something which glued the flesh of my hands to the steering wheel. A man in a black raincoat, watching. Journey to the lake was on my brain, so it felt like confirmation bias, the hallucination of a shattered mind. Sam laughed when I woke him and explained the situation. He said the tables had turned. We should have moved onwards, turned back, gone anywhere but Yellowtown. However, my mind was hardly functioning in those early hours of the morning, so I made the strange decision to pull into the car park of a little B&B in the town. "Room for two?" asked the hotel receptionist, moments after we stepped inside. "Yes, please," I replied, heading towards the desk. "2 single beds, mind." Sam rolled his eyes, his favourite response to my humorous quips. The receptionist merely nodded and handed over a key. "Room 11. The end," she said. "Beg your pardon?" I asked in a hoarse whisper, perturbed by the receptionist's uneven tone of voice. "The end of the corridor," she clarified, offering a false smile. "You won't miss it." Sam and I practically sleepwalked to our room, and the mattress unleashed a meek squeak as my lumpy body hit it. As soon as I lay down, I was overcome by a strange sense of alertness. I wish I hadn't remedied that with the following idea. "I'm going to read a little more," I said, pulling the book out of my backpack. Sam groaned. "Why did you bring that in here?" I found myself unable to crack one of my usual jokes. I have to know what happens next.
Weary from your travels, you graciously accept the keys from the innkeeper. "Room 11, the end," she says.
My eyes strained, fearfully trying to accept the words on the page. How did the book know? How did it mirror reality? I wondered. My grey matter filled with the horror of being observed by some unseen thing, and I threw the book onto the duvet. "Ha ha," Sam sarcastically grumbled. "Very funny. I'm going to sleep." "I didn't make that up, Sam. Read it for yourself," I shuddered, hurling the book at my son. He sat up and read the page. Read it several times, in fact. The boy's eyes quickly matched my own. "Is this one of your jokes, Dad? First the yellow buildings, now a scripted conversation. Well, it's not making me laugh," Sam croaked. "No, you were in the shop with me. I found the book. I didn't write it," I whispered. "I think we need to go." A boom echoed from the hotel corridor, leaving a crater in my chest. Thinking only of my son, only of getting him to safety, I summoned the bravery to stumble over to the door. "You hear a thunderous creak in the hallway," Sam read, voice trembling. "Gazing through the peephole, you see..." I didn't need my son to finish the sentence. Once again, the book had predetermined my actions. And through the peephole of the hotel door, I saw something horrifying. The man in the black raincoat stood in the hallway, one eye inspecting me from the other side, as if he could see me. The stranger's form was warped by the curvature of the glass into a malformed man of ginormous proportions. Of course, I realised that the peephole might not have warped his true form at all. And there was no accounting for his sagging skin. That was surely no trickery of the glass. "Head into the hallway, page 59. Exit through the window, page 115. "Dad, what is this? How did it know that all of these things would happen?" Sam quivered, seemingly understanding that I was not playing a cruel joke. Page 115. Does that sound right? I whispered, turning and running to the window. Sam nodded, leaping to his feet and frantically flipping through the pages as I pulled the curtains apart. Fortunately, we were on the ground floor, and the window opened wide enough for my son to slip out. He took our bags with him, and I tried to follow, but I struggled to slither my larger body through the narrow gap. "Dad!" Sam screeched. And in the reflection of the glass pane, I saw him standing behind me. The seafarer. The door hadn't opened, hadn't been ripped from its hinges in some inhuman display. The man was simply there, inside the room. I don't know how he entered. I don't know how any of it happened. One of his cold hands clamped onto my shoulder, and his touch managed to fill me to the brim with nothing at all. The paradox of all-consuming emptiness, an endless existential nightmare that may have only lasted a moment in reality. I wrenched my body free of the entity's grasp before diving through the window and landing in a crumpled heap on the gravel. Ignoring the cuts and bruises, I sprang to my feet and sprinted towards the camper with Sam. We jumped inside and made a hasty getaway. I prayed that we had chosen the right path this time, but a burgeoning feeling in my heart told me otherwise. As I drove the way we came, which is what I told myself we should have immediately done, something unexplainable happened. We found ourselves back in Yellowtown. No matter which way we drove, the road always led back to that town. After half an hour of looping, unnecessarily burning through fuel, the horrifying gravity of events dawned on both of us. We were trapped. Only the book determined our fate. Sam and I were too frightened to return to an earlier point in the story. We didn't want to change things, given that we didn't know how this unholy scripture worked. All we knew was that it wasn't a story. Every consequence was real.
You take the off-road route through the forest. But which road will bring you to the lake in time? Route 15, page 152. Route 11, page 191.
Route 11, I said, after we'd been sitting in the camper for hours. I had no idea which road to take, but I trusted Sam's judgment more than my own, and my son agreed with the sentiment that the number 11 must be important, given that it had already appeared during our journey. It was clearly a number of significance, whether sinister or safe. So Sam flipped to page 191, and I veered the camper down a rough, rocky path through the forest. The story rambled about repeating scenery for dozens of pages. The words accurately depicted the landscape running past the windows. A forgotten stretch of road, swaying fir trees, a terrified protagonist. And then the following passage progressed the narrative.
The forest approaches its end. You see the cluster of trees start to thin. Something sits beyond the edge of the woodland, a clearing for visitors to the lake.
I think we should stop before the clearing, I said. It'll give us time to read ahead and prepare. However, before I stopped, my son read something that filled my entire being with a sickening sense of terror.
I think we should stop before the clearing, you suggest. However, the forest hears you with its ears of bark. The ancient fir trees, which have heard every sound since the dawn of time. Of course, bark cannot see, but you learn very quickly that the forest has eyes too.
As Sam stopped reading, multiple noises erupted from either side of the camper. I twisted my head and squinted out of the side window. It must have been around 4 or 5 in the morning, so the light of dawn had started to illuminate the mostly darkened forest in that world, which may or may not have been ours. There was not much light, but there was enough to see something that I sometimes think I still see in my peripheral vision. An emaciated hound on its hind legs. The frightful figure, neither man nor beast, peeked around the corner of a tree. And then I noticed that there were dozens of the abominations, each horror hiding behind a different trunk. The creatures began to slink closer to our still-moving vehicle. They seemed faster than us, beings with faces horribly human. I felt sheer dread upon eyeing those haunting creatures. The way they moved was so terrifyingly unnatural, even for bipedal beings. Each monstrosity lurched with a jolting, lagging, near-static motion. Movement so detached from reality that it deepened the churning sensation in my stomach. I stepped on the pedal, but the camper didn't feel fast enough. "Dad!" Sam screamed. I realised I'd zoned out whilst he'd been screeching at me. "Page 230 or 235? He asked. "What?" I fearfully croaked. "Drive ahead or turn back," Sam cried as the horrors reached the edge of the trees, hounding us with fleshy claws. I answered my son's question by slamming the pedal into the floor of the vehicle, scorching past the mob of eager creatures. Sam flipped frantically to page 230 and continued reading in a hysterical voice.
You passed through the clearing, unwilling to stop. You hoped to put distance between your carriage and the woodland hounds. This takes you along one final road, and your destination reveals itself as you round the top of the hill.
"Dad," Sam whispered joyfully. "I see it," I replied. The lake. It must have been about a few thousand meters in length, and 1,000 meters in width. A phenomenally petrifying pool of water. As the crown of the sun began to ascend, it caught the water in a spectacular way. A sight of spectacular horror, not beauty. I didn't share my son's optimism. After all, wherever we were, it wasn't real. We were still inside the book. "Keep reading," I said as I followed the road towards the lake.
You park beside the water's edge. A strange hum emits from a source below the surface. And as you peer into the lake, you notice a sunken road, a road leading to a tunnel. Is it the way out of this strange place? Drive the van into the lake, page 236. Drive around the lake to find another way, page 240.
"I think we have to enter it," Sam said. "The book has been leading to this place, this moment. If we look for another escape route, we might lose this opportunity." My son didn't need to make a case. I agreed with him. So we did as the book said. And as the camper started to submerge, dipping into the shallow edge of the lake, we saw that the road indeed disappeared into the murky depths of the water. It was too dark to see what lay at the bottom of the unfathomably deep lake. "You always were better at these books than me, weren't you?" I said. "Nah, Mum was the expert. You were right," Sam replied. "I'm just as scared and unsure as you." Well, I actually agree with you in this case, I said. Uh-oh, Sam nervously whispered. In that case, I want to change my answer. I smiled weakly and patted my boy's shoulder. Here we go, Sam. Let's pray the book takes us home. My son flicked to page 236 as the world above the surface vanished, and we prepared for the unknown terror within the lake. We were both breathing erratically, fearing whatever the book had in store.
You gingerly dip your carriage's wheels into the lake, finding that the tyres miraculously magnetise to the underwater passage. However, the lake finds its way through the cracks of your vessel, and you realise that time is of the essence.
Sam and I screamed as water slipped through the edges of our closed windows. Part of me had hoped for something other than logic in a place that defied all laws of reality. That would have been fair, of course, and the book was anything but fair. With time slipping away, we followed the road into the blackened pit of the lake. And I wished, against all odds, that the most terrifying route would be the truest one. The only way out, as the book suggested.
You hear a mysterious tapping sound.
As Sam read the words aloud, we were startled by the noise of fingernails on glass. A sound somehow not deadened by the water. Heart clenching, I moved my eyes to the rearview mirror. And there, visible outside the campus back windows, was the seafarer. My son and I shouted as the man in the black raincoat smiled wickedly, clawing one of the back windows with his jagged nails, like serrated knives. I couldn't physically make the camper move any faster. It was sluggishly pushing along the underwater road, slowing as it became an ever-deepening tank of liquid. There came the frightening sound of glass chipping, followed by gushing water. The man in the raincoat started to snake his way through the glassless window. It should have been an impossibility, given his enormity, but he bent that unnatural world to his will. Sam and I wailed uncontrollably as the figure spiraled into the heavy camper. Yet, when all hope had departed, something caught my eye through the windshield. A deeper blackness at the end of the road. A tunnel. Sam opened the glove box, pulled out the torch, and swiveled his body to face the horrific man that was wading towards us. The water level had reached our chests, and my son could barely move, but he swung the torch at the seafarer's face. The inhuman abomination grabbed his wrist. Every urge in my body shrieked at me to stop and intervene. However, I knew that we would surely drown if I were to take my foot off the accelerator. I pressed down as Sam wrestled with the horror. The thing that hardly looked like a man anymore. The seafarer seemed to be a pale rendition of a person. A misunderstanding from whatever force created the book. As the creature seized my neck with its free hand, so did terror. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my narrow throat. I felt the corners of my vision blur as we neared the tunnel's entrance, but one final miracle emerged in the depths of that lake. I saw my wife's face in the rearview mirror. Lara! I choked her name as the water reached my neck. The demon released my son and me. We spluttered breathlessly, barely keeping our heads above water as I chugged towards the tunnel. Sam and I watched as the seafarer was torn backwards by a spectral vision in a blue hospital gown. I knew that face. those hazel eyes, the world's purest smile. There was nothing ghastly about Lara, the mother of my child and the love of my life, who came to us at the edge of death and wrenched the seafaring phantom away. I bawled silently at the undead form of my wife, which disappeared behind the camper, with her arms wrapped around the man in the raincoat. Sam and I didn't have time to stop, didn't have time to turn back. I closed my lips as the lake water started to climb my face, and then we hurtled through the tunnel's entrance. Whilst trapped in the endless void of the passageway, I thought, for a horrible moment, that it had all been for nothing. I thought my boy and I would drown anyway, the only comfort being that we would reunite with Lara. That was a terrible thought, of course. I didn't want Sam to die. He hadn't even lived. As I was unable to hold my breath any longer, a brilliant burst of light blinded me. We tipped forwards, and the camper came crashing to the ground with a bone-shattering thud. Water poured out of the open back doors, emptying the vehicle. Sam and I immediately inhaled, desperately gasping for breath. We found ourselves sitting in a drenched camper at the side of the road on which our terrible journey began a day earlier. A roadside sign to Carlisle was visible, and we read the final page of the book. A page displaying only 3 words.
You are free.
We could have gone home, but we didn't. I had a destination in mind long before finding that book. Sam and I were more determined to scatter Lara's ashes after seeing her in that hellish world. Of course, first of all, we needed another car. Phones. Clothes. Everything that had been damaged in the lake. I rented a cheap Ford sedan, and we burnt the book at the side of the road, so nobody would ever read it again. And at the end of our journey, as we stood atop a beautiful hill in Inverness, my boy and I smiled. We'd smiled since Lara died, of course, but that was the first time we felt true peace. I saw it in Sam's face. I felt it in mine. We had closure. Perhaps we were simply happy to know that Lara was still out there. Somewhere.